Then we have Surah 9:29. Fight those who believe not in God and in the last day, and who do not forbid what God and his messenger have forbidden, and who follow not the religion of truth among those who were given the book, the al-kitab, till they pay the jizya with a willing hand, being humbled. Now, there are all sorts of interpretations about this particular verse. Let me just give you what the Study Quran says here. Now, let me just, before I read the commentary. Fight those who believe not in God and in the last day. Well, Christians and Jews believe in God and in the last day. And then it says, and all of this is among those who were given the book. So, is this a subgroup of Christians? And who do not forbid what God and his messenger have forbidden. Well, that would have to be in the Quran, I would assume. So this is allowing people to do things that the Quran says not to do amongst Christians and Jews, but they also are individuals who do not believe in God or the last day. Or is it possible that if you don't believe in Muhammad, that's evidence you don't believe in God in the last day? I don't know. It's the Quran claims to be mubinun, which means clear, perspicuous, but this text is not clear and perspicuous, which is a problem because it's been misused from your own perspective many, many times. And who follow not the religion of truth among those who were given the book. Now, if the religion of truth is Islam, then who is being referred to here? It would be easy to see. There would be a way of reading this that you need to fight all Christians. But I seem to see a way of reading this, fight all Christians, till what? Till they pay the jizya. Now what was the jizya? There's different ways it's defined, but fundamentally, the best way of interpreting it is the tax that is placed upon Jews, Christians, and eventually Zoroastrians that live under Muslim rule. And the idea is they don't have to pay the same things that Muslims have to pay as far as they don't have to go to war, those types of taxes. So there needs to be something for them to be protected by the Muslims. Now, historically, at times, the jizya was simply used to keep Christians and Jews completely suppressed, to keep them out of any type of meaningful business type thing. It's used that way historically a number of times in a very horrific fashion. But till they pay the jizya with a willing hand, and then this translation says, being humbled. Being humbled. That's not what the term means. As we'll see when I read something else, it's much stronger than that. It's feeling themselves humiliated. It's the same term that's used. I remember when I was studying Arabic actively, which I've not been able to do for quite some time, but I remember when I was studying Arabic actively, I remember in looking at this in the Quran, I said, I've seen that word someplace before, and it's because I was studying parallel passages in the Quran. And in the stories of when Satan, Iblis, is cast out, that's the same word. That he is to feel ashamed when he is cast out of the presence of God because he would not bow down to Adam. Same word. It's a very strong word. And so this is not just feel themselves humbled, but this is humiliated. And I believe it's Ibn Kathir will say the same thing. Here's what we read in a modern commentary. This is the Study Quran. Some commentators connect this verse with the Tabuk expedition, the period after the Battle of Hunayn, corresponded with the final defeat of the Persians by the Byzantines. The former retreated from Syria and Egypt, and the Byzantine Emperor Heraclius returned the true cross to Jerusalem, Word began to reach the prophet that the Byzantines were planning a major offensive against the now increasingly powerful Islamic polity, and had enlisted the Arab tribes of Ghassan, Lakham, Judum, and Amila, who occupied the buffer zone in the Levant between the Arabian Peninsula and the Byzantine and Persian empires. The prophet mustered the largest army that had yet taken the field and marched north on the Syrian campaign. The army remained in Tabuk on the road to Syria and situated at the east of the Gulf of Aqaba for 20 days, but the rumors the Byzantine force gathered against the Muslims were unfounded, or they decided not to take the field after having heard the size of the prophet's army. Al-Razi, among the major commentators, devotes the most attention to this verse's description of the people of the book, especially as being those who do not believe in God in the last day, knowing that both Jews and Christians claim to affirm both belief in both God and the hereafter. The Quran itself states in 3:113 through 14, among the people of the book is an upright community who recite God's signs in the watches of the night while they prostrate. They believe in God and the last day, enjoin right and forbid wrong, and hasten unto good deeds. Also with regard to the Christians, the Quran states in 582, that is because among them are priests and monks, and because they are not arrogant. Al-Razi mentions that Muslim theologians themselves occupy a range of positions regarding fundamental matters of belief, such as the ontological status of the attributes of God and the scope of human free will. By doing so, he also acknowledges that the criticisms directed at Jews and Christians for certain aspects of their belief can be equally directed at certain theological positions within the Islamic spectrum. This is significant because, according to the Quran's own attestation and the claims of these communities themselves, they, or at least some of them, believe in God and in the Day of Judgment. However, in Al-Razi's view, those people of the book who can truthfully be said to believe in God in the last day still fall under the legal status set out by this verse, namely, that being fought until they enter into a treaty and pay an indemnity. He sees no legal reason to distinguish between them, noting, these who believe in God do not fall under the description of this verse, but the requirement of the indemnity holds for them, since it is said that when an indemnity is required for some of them, one says the same for all of them, since no one, that is, no jurist, holds the view that there is a separation. That is to say, he relies on the absence of any legal opinion on the contrary, while acknowledging that some people of the book are not those defined by this verse. Now, that's fascinating to me, because this does illustrate something. The legal understanding of Al-Razi depends upon later tradition rather than, and he recognizes the actual words of the Quran make a distinction, but that legal precedent later on means we shouldn't make application of that. This is important because in speaking with a number of my Muslim friends, what they say is the moderate Muslim, the position of historic Islam, developed these traditions, this fiqh, this jurisprudence that circumscribed the activity of jihad, and that the Wahhabis, some of the Salafis, obviously Daesh, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, so on and so forth, that these groups are like modern Protestants. And they are like the Roman Catholics. They have their traditions. They have the things that developed over time. And these people are going back to the earliest period and saying, we reject all of that. So they actually view it as if modern, well, at least Protestants at the time of the Reformation, not modern mainstream Protestants, are more like the radicals. And there you have an example where Al-Razi and later jurisprudence becomes the lens through which he interprets the Quran itself. That's sort of like how Roman Catholics interpret the New Testament as well, through the lens of their interpretation of patristic sources, things like that. So that's rather interesting. This interpretation characterizes much of the mainstream of Islamic legal opinion on the matter. Though this verse speaks of people among those who were given the book, the Quran also mentions those who were given the book both to praise certain Jews and Christians and to criticize some of them. Thus, the mere fact of their identity as people of the book cannot be the single decisive reason why they should be fought. Al-Samarkandi glosses do not forbid by saying what is forbidden in the Torah, the Gospel, and the Quran, while Al-Zamakhshari quotes an opinion that interpreters do not forbid to mean they do not act in accordance with what is in the Torah and the Gospel. However, many commentators read this verse as saying that they are not Muslims and that they reject the Prophet. Jizya means the rendering of a thing owed, and as a legal matter amounts to an indemnity or tribute from non-Muslim communities residing within the Islamic State, with whom Muslims have a treaty. Such treaty holders paid this indemnity but were exempt from paying the alms, the zakah, or contributing to military defense, as Muslims were obliged to do. Jurists disagreed as to the precise amount of the indemnity and the method of payment. Here with a willing hand which some interpret to mean that they should pay directly without intermediary and without delay. Others say that it refers to its reception by Muslims and means generously, as in with an open hand, since the taking of jizya is a form of munificence that averted a state of conflict. Finally, some interpret being humbled to mean that the treaty holders should render the indemnity in a state of humility, but some say that the very fact of paying the indemnity is tantamount to this being humbled or being the minor party. Though the practice of forcing the treaty holders to pay the indemnity in a humbled manner was not unknown in Islamic history, many jurists, such as al-Nawawi, pointed out that the Prophet and caliphs never did so and said that the treaty people's indemnity should be received with gentleness as one would receive payment of a debt. Umar ibn al-Khattab reportedly agreed to call the indemnity charity when asked to change its name from jizya. Okay. Then it talks about dimitude, the dhimmis, Zoroastrians, so on and so forth. There's more there. Okay, so there's a modern commentary. I'm trying to leave enough time to read this. This is, whenever this gets posted, I guess, we crashed and died, crashed and burned? No? Can't tell? Huh, okay. Tafsir is commentary on the Quran. And one of the most widely published, widely read commentaries, tafsir, on the Quran is by Ibn Kathir. And so very often what we're told is, you're not accurately representing our position and things like that. But if you're reading Ibn Kathir, you're reading fundamental Islamic commentary from the past. Let me read you commentary on Surah 9, 28, 29 following. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I do that, my apologies. There was something else that needed to be noted in Surah 9. And this came up in my discussion with Abdullah al-Andalusi. What are the very next words after Surah 29, 929? Because what I'm being told is basically, this had to do with this. They heard the Byzantines were coming, and so, there was a particular context that can't really be reproduced today. But here's my concern. Again, just looking at the text. Not looking at traditions that developed hundreds of years later, but looking at the text itself. Here's the next part. The Jews say that Ezra is the Son of God, and the Christians say that the Messiah is the Son of God. Those are words from their mouths. They resemble the words of those who disbelieved before, the kafirun. God curse them. How they are perverted. They have taken their rabbis and monks as lords apart from God, as well as the Messiah, son of Mary, though they were only commanded to worship one God. Now, right there, we have the regular misunderstanding of the Quran concerning the nature of Christian worship. I've never had any of my Muslim friends show me any evidence whatsoever from the text of the Quran that the author of the Quran really had intimate knowledge of what is in the New Testament. If you believe Allah is the author of the Quran, Allah had intimate knowledge of what's in the New Testament, even if he didn't inspire it, even from your perspective, right? But I see no evidence of it. Anybody who reads the New Testament knows that, for example, in the Carmen Christi, Paul is willing to quote from a text that's about Jehovah God, apply it to Jesus, and then say, every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess the glory of God the Father through Jesus Christ. No idea of separate gods, no idea of a division of worship that's inappropriate or anything along those lines. And when it says, though they were only commanded to worship one God, there is no God but he, that's the exact same language that's used every time the word three is used. Do not say three, there's only one God. Same thing in view here. Glory be to him above the partners they ascribe. That's an accusation of shirk in the context of Christianity. Is it not? I mean, can you show me where I'm wrong about that? Because I know my Muslim friends say, well, not necessarily. And, it doesn't specifically say shirk, but how do you avoid that? The vast majority of Muslims I've talked to do believe that Christians are mushrikun, right? That we commit shirk. And there it is, glory be to him, above the partners they ascribe. They desire to extinguish the light of God with their mouths, but God refuses to do aught but complete his light, though the disbelievers be averse. He it is who sent his messenger with guidance in the religion of truth to make it prevail over all religion, though the idolaters be averse. Now, here's the point. These are the very next words after Surah 9:29. And if that's not theology, I don't know what theology is. The whole argument, I suppose if you take the perspective that the Quran was edited, redacted, I mean, if all of you Muslims that take the perspective on the Old Testament of the JEDP theory and all the rest of that kind of stuff, you got no reason to object to someone saying, that looks like it was just very poorly redacted, and you had a civil verse and it's immediately followed by this religious stuff, but that was just some scribe later on anyways. That's not generally an option for most Orthodox Sunni, as far as I can tell. That's theology. And it seems to identify Christians as mushrikun and says to fight them for what they believe. Seems to be what it's saying. I'm just asking, why isn't that? I'm applying the same, I'm trying to listen to this text in its context. The same way I ask you to listen to our text in their context. So, we go to Tafsir Ibn Kathir. Tafsir Ibn Kathir. This is the way the leader of the faithful, Umar bin al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, demanded his well-known conditions be met by the Christians. These conditions, okay. Actually, the page turned. I'll get to that in a second because it is important. Therefore, when people of scriptures disbelieved in Muhammad, they had no beneficial faith in any messenger or what the messengers brought. Rather, they followed their religions because they conformed to their ideas, lusts, and the ways of their forefathers, not because they are Allah's law and religion. Had they been true believers in their religions, that faith would have directed them to believe in Muhammad, because all prophets gave the good news of Muhammad's advent and commanded them to obey and follow him. Now you know why we've debated a few times, does the Bible prophesy the coming of Muhammad? It's central to the Quranic understanding, and it's found throughout the tafsir literature of the earlier period. I think it's one of the weakest arguments. You simply have to twist Scripture to an incredible extent to try to horseshoe Muhammad into any of those texts, especially the Song of Solomon. Oh my. Yet when he was sent, they disbelieved in him, even though he is the mightiest of all messengers. Therefore, they do not follow the religion of earlier prophets, because these religions came from Allah, but because these suit their desires and lusts. Therefore, their claimed faith in an earlier prophet will not benefit them, because they disbelieved in the master, the mightiest, the last and most perfect of all the prophets. That's Muhammad. Hence, Allah's statement, fight against those who believe not in Allah, nor in the last day, nor forbid that which has been forbidden by Allah and his messenger, and those who acknowledge not the religion of truth among the people of the scripture. This honorable ayah was revealed with the order to fight the people of the book after the pagans were defeated. The people entered Allah's religion in large numbers, and the Arabian Peninsula was secured under the Muslims' control. Allah commanded his messenger to fight the people of the scriptures, Jews and Christians, on the 9th year of Hijrah, and he prepared his army to fight the Romans and called the people to jihad, announcing his intention and destination. The messenger sent his intent to various Arab areas around Al-Madinah to gather forces, and he collected an army of 30,000. Some people from Al-Madinah and some hypocrites in and around it lagged behind, for that year was a year of drought and intense heat. The messenger of Allah marched, heading towards Asham to fight the Romans until he reached Tabuk, where he set camp for about 20 days next to its water resources. He then prayed to Allah for a decision and went back to Al-Madinah because it was a hard year and the people were weak, as we will mention, Allah willing. Then, in regards to until they pay the jizya, and then with willing submission in defeat and subservience and feel themselves subdued. And here's Ibn Kathir's interpretation. Disgraced, humiliated, and belittled. Therefore, Muslims are not allowed to honor the people of Dimma or elevate them above Muslims, for they are miserable, disgraced, and humiliated. Muslim recorded from Abu Hurairah that the Prophet said, do not initiate the salam, that is the blessings of peace, to the Jews and Christians, and if you meet them, any of them in a road, force them to its narrowest alley. I'm just reading Ibn Kathir. So you're not to wish us peace, and if you meet them in the road, force them in the narrowest alley. They are to be miserable, disgraced, and humiliated. This is why the leader of the faithful, Umar bin al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, demanded his well-known conditions be met by the Christians, these conditions that ensured their continued humiliation, degradation, and disgrace. The scholars of Hadith narrated from Abdur Rahman bin Khan al-Ashari that he said, I recorded for Umar bin al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, the terms of the treaty of peace he conducted with the Christians of Asham. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, this is a document of the servant of Allah, Umar, the leader of the faithful, from the Christians of such and such city. When you Muslims came to us, we requested safety for ourselves, children, property, and followers of our religion. We made a condition on ourselves that we will neither erect in our areas a monastery, church, or a sanctuary for a monk, nor restore any place of worship that needs restoration, nor use any of them for the purpose of enmity against Muslims. We will not prevent any Muslim from resting in our churches, whether they come by day or night, and we will open the doors of our houses of worship for the wayfarer and passerby. Those Muslims who come as guests will enjoy boarding and food for 3 days. We will not allow a spy against Muslims into our churches and homes or hide deceit or betrayal against Muslims. We will not teach our children the Quran. We will not teach our children the Quran, publicize practices of shirk, invite anyone to shirk, or prevent any of our fellows from embracing Islam if they choose to do so. We will respect Muslims, move from the places we sit if they choose to sit in them. We will not imitate their clothing, caps, turbans, sandals, hairstyles, speech, nicknames, and title names, or ride on saddles, hang swords on the shoulders, collect weapons of any kind, or carry those weapons. We will not encrypt our stamps in Arabic or sell liquor. We will have the front of our hair cut, wear our customary clothes wherever we are, wear belts around our waist, refrain from erecting crosses on the outside of our churches and demonstrating them and our books in public in Muslim fairways and markets. We will not sound the bells of our churches except discreetly, or raise our voices while reciting our holy books inside our churches in the presence of Muslims, nor raise our voices with prayer at our funerals, or light torches in funeral processions in the fairways of Muslims or their markets. We will not bury our dead next to Muslim dead, or buy servants who were captured by Muslims. We will be guides for Muslims and refrain from breaching their privacy in their homes. When I gave this document to Umar, he added to it, we will not beat any Muslim. These are the conditions that we set against ourselves and followers of our religion in return for safety and protection. If we break any of these promises that we set for your benefit against ourselves, then our dhimma, our promise of protection, is broken, and you are allowed to do with us what you are allowed of people of defiance and rebellion. That's how Umar interpreted, as a caliph, these words. There's much more here, especially in regards to the theology that followed after this. Remember, the following ayat are very theologically oriented, but time is passing, and I have only a few minutes. I want to go to Hilali Khan. This is a translation with commentary of the Quran, and here in well, that's the same thing. Let's see here. Which section was I was going to? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay. O Allah's messenger, shall we see our Lord on the day of resurrection? He said, do you have any difficulty in seeing the sun and the moon when the sky is clear? We said, no. He said, so you'll have no difficulty in seeing your Lord on that day, as you have no difficulty in seeing the sun and the moon in a clear sky. The prophet then said, somebody will then announce, let every nation follow what they used to worship. So the people of the cross will go with their cross, and the idolaters will go with their idols, and the worshippers of every god, false deities, will go with their god, till there remain those who used to worship Allah, from the righteous, pious ones, and the mischievous, evil ones, and some of the people of the scriptures, Jews and Christians. Now, immediately, again, worship the cross? Well, I suppose if you see some Roman Catholic prostrations and things like that, I could understand that. But again, that's not what the New Testament teaches. We glory in the cross because it's the means by which we've been justified in God's sight, but worship it? No. Then hell will be presented before them as if it were a mirage. Then it will be said to the Jews, what did you use to worship? They will reply, we used to worship Ezra, the son of Allah. I have no idea where that comes from. Not historically, anyways. It will be said to them, you are liars, for Allah has neither a wife nor a son. What do you want now? They will reply, we want you to provide us with water. Then it will be said to them, drink, and they will fall down in hell instead. Then it will be said to the Christians, what did you worship? They will reply, we used to worship Messiah, the son of Allah. It will be said, you are liars, for Allah has neither a wife nor a son. How many times when I've spoken on this subject? The fundamental misunderstanding of the Quran, that the sonship of Jesus has something to do with a wife. It is right there. It's clear. And here it's in the hadith. It will be said, you are liars, for Allah has neither a wife nor a son. What do you want now? They will say, we want you to provide us with water. Then it will be said to them, drink, and they will fall down in hell instead, till there remain only those who worship Allah alone, the righteous, pious ones, and the mischievous, evil ones, etc., etc. So Christians are given this mirage of water. When they fall down to drink the water, it's actually hell, and they fall into hell for having worshipped Jesus. This is provided by Halali Khan in Surah 9. Halali Khan's not ancient. Halali Khan's modern. Why such a unpleasant story time with Jimmy section here, especially because a lot of people fell asleep a while back. I realize we lost a lot of folks, and I get that, but we still have to address these issues. I understand that later Islamic theology developed in such a fashion as to limit the appropriate use of jihad. It had to. If it was going to create any type of a meaningful culture or civilization, it had to. My concern, it remains my concern. I ask serious-minded Muslims to think, you know everything I just read. You've heard it all before. When you actually look at the sources themselves, is the later formulation an artificial barrier against the spirit of the early time period that had to be restrained for civilization to be restored? And if it is an artificial construct, how can you defend it against those who reject it today?